Hey guys, just got done watching 2006 Hatchet. Now, I'd heard a lot of things about this movie before I watched it. I'll just put it down for a minute. And I wasn't sure if I'd like it because you know what it's like. You hear some good things about films, you hear some negative things, and you're like, is it going to be any good? Is it going to be bad? And then you find out it's got Robert England in it, and you're like, ooh. Then you find it's got Kane Hodder in it, and you're like, ooh. And then you find it's got Tony Todd in it, and you're like, ooh, you know? But the person who's in it the most out of those three is Kane Hodder, because he plays Victor Crowley, which I think really makes the film a lot better. See, Robert England's in the beginning, he dies in the first 3, 4 minutes, which to be honest with you, a film doesn't need him or Tony Todd in it a long time to be great. It just needs them to be in it the right way, I guess. So this is the cast. You got Joel David Moore, who was in Avatar and Dodgeball. Tamar Feldman, Dion Richmond, who I think was in Sister Sister. I think. Kane Hodder, we all know what he's in. Mercedes McNabb, who plays Misty. And she was Harmony Kendall in Angel and Buffy. In here, anyone who liked her, if they didn't know, she gets her breasts out in this multiple times. Parry Shen, who's the funniest Chinese guy, I think he's supposed to be Chinese guy in this movie. Joe Murray, who was in God Bless America. Jolie Firanvati, can't say her name for Richard Well, and Patrika Darbo. Okay, so the movie starts out, and you've got Robert England, you've got Samson, and you've got his son Ainsley. I'm doing some fishing, and they're in the middle of the swamp. I'm guessing they're fishing. So, everything, basically, Ainsley's got all his nerves. Ainsley ends up going to do a PvP, a piddle. And he gets killed in a really gory way. And as soon as that happens, I'm like, yes. So we go, and we meet Ben, who's with his friends, Marcus, and some other friends at Mardi Gras. And all these women are like, hey, woohoo. So you get breasts everywhere. Well, Ben's getting a bit tired of that. He doesn't really care because he broke up with his girlfriend Christina. And he thinks she's having sex with the new guy in the love chair, but his mum bought her. And that's the shocking thing about this film. Because the whole way through you're going, is she having sex with the guy on the love chair, but his mum bought her? That's all I kept thinking through the film. So, they basically split up and you get Ben and Marcus walking along and they're witnessing Pill being sick and they go into this shop. They knock on this door. Sorry. And who answers the door? Tony Todd. And he plays, let me get this right, Reverend Zombie. And basically he's got this pattern on his face out, he looks crazy. And he goes on about the, because what Ben wants is to go on the swamp tour. So he says some stuff, and then the funniest thing he says, he goes to the door and he goes, mind the sidewalk. And I was in tears of laughter over that. I don't know why, but I was. But I love Tony Todd, and I loved him as the Candy Man, obviously. Helena. And so they go into the shop, and they say Misty and they say Jenna. Misty and Jenna are getting their breasts out for basically Doug Shapiro to record them. I think he was meant to be a porn producer or something. I'm not sure if he was meant to be a porn producer or a producer of movies. I'm guessing porn because it was something like Beaver Bodies or something, the company was saying. Anyway, that don't really matter. So they're like, woohoo! And Marcus is like, So then you meet Sean, Perry Chen, And he goes, "You want to go on the you want to go on the tour? That's $40 each." And you're like, wow. So they all start getting on the bus. So you've got Marcus, Ben, Misty, Sean, Doug, Jenna, Jim, Shannon, and Mary Beth. They're all on the bus. So they get on, and Marcus is like, "Oh, can I sit next to you, to Jenna?" Because he was looking at her breasts and he really likes her. So he says things like this. So Ben ends up sitting next to Mary Beth and he tries to communicate with her. She doesn't like him at first. She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't care about his life story. And he tells her about how he broke up with his girlfriend and all this stuff. So they're doing the tour, and Sean, the guide, the tour guide, he basically was off notes, goes, "Ooh," and all says all this stuff that's supposed to happen, but it's all fake because it's to do with the water and the gases and stuff. Marcus points that out. So after a while, they end up stopping because they have to get on a boat. This is where we meet an old man. Now, I'm going to have a quick look and see what his name was. I'm guessing his name was Jack Cracker. So he basically sits there and he goes, "No, don't do it. Don't." And Sean goes, "The guy drinks his own pee. Ignore him." "No, you're all going to die." And as they drive off, he pulls up this bottle and he drinks out of it. It's his urine. I was in tears of laughter because I was like, this is so silly. So they're on the tour and Sean says some more weird stuff and then they end up crashing. They get off and they see the old house of Victor Crowley and Mr. Crowley. So Mary Beth tells the story basically about how poor Victor Crowley was born with severe body problems. You know, his face was all messed up and his body. And then Mr. Crowley always looked after him, but it was very hard. They kept it a secret and all the other kids would bully him. And one day the kids decided to throw firecrackers and stuff to get him out, and the place went on fire. And Mr. Crowley comes home, he tries to get in the door with a hatchet, but the hatchet hits Victor, because Victor's got obviously mental health issues, I reckon, from the problems he's had. And he hits the door and he hits his son in the head. So then she says for 10 years he died from a broken heart. Well, Mr. Crowley is played by Kane Hodder, and so is Victor Crowley as an adult. Now, everybody's seen Kane Hodder as Jason, and they like him as Jason, right? He is great as Victor Crowley as well. The fact that if Victor Crowley became a real horror legend, Kane Hodder would have technically been 2 horror legends, to my knowledge. It could have been more, it could have been less. Anyway, so they're telling that story, and Jim and Shannon, Prometeo, are walking off because he's injured. And they're going, "Stop telling ghost stories." And as they walk closer and closer, Victor comes running out the burnt down house. He grabs hold of Jim and sticks the hatchet in his back and really, really tears in. Then grabs hold of his wife and rips her face like this and rips it, and her tongue's going, "Ah." It's so great. It's so violent and so great. So basically, they run off after Mary Beth shoots him because he goes, "Ugh," and you're like, this ain't gonna be the end of this film. So they're running off. All this funny stuff happens. Like they do this comedy sitcom kind of chatting, and then Victor turns up and kills them one by one. Well, at one point they're trying to lead him into a trap to try and catch him, I guess. And Misty's standing there, and they're bickering, and then all of a sudden they go, "Where's Misty?" And they see her bag, whatever it was, and Ben turns around and sees. Ben turns around and he gets her head thrown at him, her legs, her abdominal. It's just really funny. And Victor goes to him. He basically gets in the back there. They set him on fire. He chases them through the graveyard of the swamp. And basically, one by one, they start dying even more. Marcus gets killed, and they get on there's this great bit where Victor throws this big metal this big metal pipe thing, and it goes right into Ben's foot, and he starts running at them. And as Victor runs at them, she goes, "Bend your knee," and they turn it so the thing's pointing at him, and he goes right on it. And Victor goes right on it. Victor Crowley goes on it, and they're like, "Oh, it's dead," and he's got to tear it out of his foot. So they're doing that, and just as that's happening, Victor goes, "Pugh!" And all this blood spurts right on Ben's face. It's just really, really good. And they get off and they get on the boat. Now, the boat scene, I have to admit, there's a lot of things in this film which reference other horror movies. And the boat scene where they're still on a boat, where Mary Beth gets pulled under the water, to me, that was kind of like a reference to Friday the 13th point under the water. And she's underwater, but there's nothing there. She's just there. So he's looking over Ben, and then you see his hand in the water. And she grabs hold of it, and it pulls her up, and it's actually Victor Crowley holding his arm, but he ripped off. And I was like, yeah! And he kills them both, and I'm like, yes! And I was like, this movie is so much fun. You know, there's the comedy, there's the gruesome kills. The CGI is non-existent in this movie, so it's even better. It's definitely an old school American horror film, especially slasher. It reminded me of the glory days of the 80s, and I love that about this film. Knowing there's two more, I'm going to watch the second one in a minute because I'm addicted to Victor Crowley. And yeah, so overall the acting was what you'd expect from a low budget movie. But it's low budget, but it's low budget in the right sense. What I mean by that is it's entertaining, it keeps on moving along, the acting's pretty good. You've got some really good actors in it. I mean, Dean Richmond, he was in Sister Sister, and he was great. I think he was in Sister Sister. Let's have a quick look, just to make sure I'm not a muppet. Yep, he was in Sister Sister, so I was right. And he's in Scream 3 and Not Another Teen Movie in Van Wilder. So it's a really good film. I highly recommend people watch it because it's definitely worth your time. It's only 84 minutes long. It's just so much fun. Like the bit when Shapiro, played by Joel Murray, is running through the woods of the swamp and he gets his head twisted. And when they find his bag, they find out that he was just basically a pervert trying to get them to take their clothes off and stuff. And it was just so 80s. And it was so fantastic. The lighting wasn't perfect, but from what I heard, he only had the budget for one light at one point. Adam Green, that is. And I just think that it's a low budget movie, but it's worth your time. Unlike a lot of them, it's worth the time to watch. Because if you like 80s slashers and you like 80s horror movies, this is the kind of film for you because it has a great amount of comedy as well as horror. And it never takes itself completely seriously, but it never gets to the point where it's just over the top silliness. And I like that about this film. I like Kane Hodder as Victor Crowley because he's got that build, he's got that walk, he's got that rundown, you know. He really brings Victor Crowley as an adult to life because as a kid, the way he moves is the same as he moves as an adult actually. So it was really good to see. And I've got to be honest, I like Kane Hodder. I think he's a great horror villain character to have. I was a bit upset about Robert Englund not being in it longer, like I said, and Tony Todd, because I do like them. I would like to have seen them in it longer, but you know, that's that, isn't it? Really. The funny thing is, they're both in the Wishmaster movies as well, in number 1. And they're not that long in that either. But it's fantastic to see them in any horror movie. And I just love it. I just think this film's great. So I highly recommend this film, guys. I'm going to give it a... I'm going to give it a 4.5. I'm going to give Hatchet a 4.5. Because it's fun. It's exciting. You never get bored. The Asian guy, Sean, is just hysterically funny. You want him to die, and when he does, it's great. There's a great gory scene with Jenna where he grabs hold of her and he impales her on a bit of metal. That's fantastic special effects. I will say this, I absolutely, there you go, John Cole Buchler. Anyway, I really like the effects in this. It made me feel like I was watching an old school film again. And to be honest with you, that's the one thing I miss about the new movies. I miss the Tom Savini makeup effects. I miss the old school from the 80s and 90s. I don't like this CGI stuff. I think CGI ruins movies. It's good for animation movies, but it's not good for real action movies, live action ones. You know, but you let me know what you think about that, actually. Do you prefer CGI? Do you not like CGI? Do you like practical effects? Have you seen Hatchet? Do you like Hatchet? Have you seen any of the other two? Do you like them? Yeah, so a 4.5 out of 5. Great film. I highly recommend it. I'll give it a 4.5 because it needed some improvement. There are some really silly parts in it, like Marcus is always constantly going like, "No, Bo, I ain't doing that. Oh no, no, no." And that's gonna sound funny, but it felt like the stereotypical. But then that's a part of the movie too, so you know you can't fault that. So yeah, a great movie, highly recommend it. That's Hatchet from 2006, directed by Adam Green. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and let me know what you think of the movie. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a lovely, lovely day.